The biggest shifts in your life won't come with fireworks. They'll come in silence, before you even understand what just changed. You were taught to believe that transformation is slow, methodical, and logical. It follows a timeline, a staircase, a linear path with measurable steps and milestones. That change is something you earn through years of effort. But that idea is not just wrong, it's designed to keep you waiting, doubting, and stuck. Because real change, the kind that rewires your reality, it doesn't follow time, it follows energy. And when the energy changes, when your internal signal hits a new frequency, everything begins to shift. Not gradually, not politely, but instantly. You don't evolve by working harder at the old self. You disappear from it. You don't walk to the next version of you. You jump. And when you understand what that actually means, you'll never chase change the same way again. You've been trained to believe that change takes time, that progress is always incremental, that transformation is a reward you earn by being patient, disciplined, and consistent. But that model isn't truth. It's programming. It's the narrative handed to you by a system that thrives on you moving slowly, doubting often, and staying in orbit around your current identity. Because if you knew how quickly you could shift, if you understood the mechanics of real transformation, you'd stop playing by their rules, and they can't afford that. See, linear growth makes sense to the rational mind. It's what we're taught in school, what we see in job promotions, what we're told by self-help books. Do the right things, check the right boxes, and slowly, maybe, you'll get to where you want to be. But quantum transformation doesn't work like that. It's not earned, it's aligned with. It's not about doing more. It's about becoming energetically incompatible with who you used to be. When that happens, the shift doesn't unfold over time. It lands in a moment, and that moment never looks the way you expect. It's rarely euphoric. It often feels like disorientation, like stillness, like something invisible rearranging itself behind the scenes. You wake up and feel off. The things that used to fit don't. The desires you used to chase feel hollow. You try to explain it to others, but the words don't land. That's not confusion. That's the early tremor of a jump already beginning. Your identity is vibrating out of phase with your current timeline. And when the gap gets wide enough, you won't need to push your way into a new life. You'll simply no longer exist in the old one. But here's the catch. The programming runs deep. When that shift begins, most people don't recognize it for what it is. They interpret the stillness as stuckness, the emptiness as failure, the loss of passion as a red flag. And because they've been taught to measure progress in results, they abort the jump. They crawl back into the old frequency and call it safety. But safety is just the sedative that keeps you from activating the truth. The field was already responding. You just didn't hold long enough for reality to reflect it. Some shifts require no proof before the leap. Just precision, just a decision, just alignment. And that kind of alignment, it can't always be explained on YouTube. Some transmissions are too raw, too direct, too challenging to share here without interference. That's why we created Insights Academy, a free newsletter where we explore these deeper truths, uncensored. And right now, you'll also get a free copy of the Kybalion when you sign up using the link in the description. Don't miss this. Now imagine this. Instead of forcing yourself to improve the old self, you drop the story that version of you ever needed fixing. You stop holding the past in place by repeatedly identifying with it. You stop trying to climb a staircase and instead step out of the building entirely. That's what a jump is, and you've felt it before. The decision that made no sense but felt inevitable. The conversation that ended a chapter in seconds. The job you walked away from and never looked back. You didn't grow out of those moments. You quantum leapt through them. And what made it possible wasn't strategy, it was coherence. In that moment, your heart, your nervous system, your gut, your field, they all aligned, and the old frequency couldn't hold you anymore. That's the science no one talks about. That's the power they want you to think is spiritual fantasy or motivational hype. But this isn't hype, it's physics. Real, measurable, energetic reorganization. So the next time you feel like you've outgrown something but can't explain why, Trust that. The jump doesn't begin when life gets louder. It begins when your soul gets quiet. And if you can stay in that signal long enough, reality has no choice but to bend. You expect clarity. That's the problem. You were told that transformation would feel like knowing, like confidence, like certainty. But the truth is, when a real shift begins, it doesn't feel like stepping into power. It feels like losing your footing. It feels like being stretched between two realities, the one that shaped you and the one that's calling you. And that tension, that's not failure. That's the frequency recalibrating. Because when you jump timelines, when you truly collapse the old version of you, you're not just rearranging thoughts or habits. You're exiting a broadcast entirely. And in that space between who you were and who you're becoming, the familiar disappears, but the new hasn't landed yet. That's why it feels like confusion. That's why it feels like silence. But silence isn't absence. It's reassembly. Most people panic in that void. They start grasping for what used to make sense. They reach for old beliefs, old habits, old distractions, anything to make the discomfort go away. But that's like stepping off an elevator mid-floor and trying to reattach yourself to the past. The jump has already started. You're just resisting the vertigo that comes with freedom. Because transformation doesn't begin with inspiration. It begins with interruption. And that interruption can be brutal. You'll feel tired for no reason. You'll outgrow conversations without knowing why. You'll lose interest in things that once felt essential, and you'll think something's wrong with you. But nothing's wrong. It's just that the signal that sustained the old version of you is weakening. You're detuning from it. And in that detuning, the new frequency is still fragile. It doesn't have roots yet. So don't confuse unfamiliarity with danger. What you're feeling isn't chaos. It's coherence being born. It's easy to forget that identity is a signal, not a story. You think your self is built from memories, preferences, and goals. But at the quantum level, you're a pattern of energy, a broadcast. And the field you live in, it doesn't respond to what you say you want. It responds to what you are, consistently, unconsciously, and vibrationally. That's why so many people feel stuck despite trying everything. They're taking action from the same frequency they're trying to escape, hoping while fearing, visualizing while doubting, talking transformation while rehearsing the emotions of being trapped. The field doesn't speak English. It speaks coherence. If your thoughts say yes, but your body says no, if your goals reach forward, but your nervous system clings to the past, the broadcast is scrambled. And scrambled signals get scrambled results. That's not the universe testing you. That's feedback. That's precision. That's the mirror being honest. So here's the uncomfortable truth. The jump rarely comes with clarity first. It comes with collapse. The collapse of certainty, of control, of who you thought you had to be. And that collapse isn't destruction. It's space. Space for the new pattern to emerge. But only if you don't run from the void. Only if you can sit in the static without rushing to label it. Think about the last time you tried to figure it out. All the thinking, the journaling, the mental gymnastics. And yet nothing clicked, because figuring it out is what the old identity does to survive. The new identity doesn't need to figure. It already knows. But that knowing isn't intellectual. It's embodied. It's felt in the gut. It lands like a truth that doesn't ask for permission. That's why the jump always feels premature. Like you're letting go before you're ready. Like you're acting before you're certain. But readiness is a myth created by fear. The self that wants to be ready is the same self that's trying not to die. And you can't jump while negotiating with your captor. So if you're in that space right now, if nothing makes sense, if everything feels like it's falling apart, if you're questioning everything you once believed, good. That means you're close. The jump doesn't announce itself with applause. It whispers through discomfort. And if you can hear that whisper, you've already started moving. Now the only question is, will you keep going even before the proof arrives? Most people think manifestation is about desire. That if you want something badly enough, think about it often enough, speak it loud enough, you'll bring it into existence. But the quantum field doesn't respond to what you want. It mirrors what you are. And what you are is not a list of goals or affirmations. It's a frequency, a broadcast, a signal that ripples out from your body, your emotions, your subconscious patterns, every second of every day. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you embody. And embodiment isn't about performance. It's not walking around pretending to be confident while your nervous system is still gripped by fear. It's not saying the right affirmations while silently expecting nothing to change. The field doesn't care about your words. It listens to your coherence. And coherence isn't loud. It's exact. It's the moment when your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors align in such a precise way that the universe has no choice but to respond. That's why you can work hard, say all the right things, and still feel like nothing's shifting. Because the energy underneath your actions is contradicting your vision. You say you want abundance, but you rehearse scarcity in your thoughts. You chase love, but carry rejection in your nervous system. You set goals from a place of lack, and then wonder why life keeps mirroring the very emptiness you're trying to escape. The field is not withholding from you. It's obeying you, relentlessly. Exactly, without fail. This is where most people get stuck. They think they need to do more, want harder, prove their worth. But it's not about effort, it's about clarity. Clarity of signal, clarity of identity, clarity of emotional tone. And clarity requires one thing above all: self-honesty. You have to admit what you're actually broadcasting. Not what you say you believe, not what you post about online, but what you feel when no one's watching. That's your real frequency. And that's what reality is responding to. You've been trained to lie to yourself to stay safe, to shrink your truth so others will accept you, to deny your pain so you can be seen as strong. But every lie fractures your field. Every self-denial scrambles your signal. And when your broadcast is filled with contradictions, you live in a reality filled with them too. Hope and doubt, action and hesitation, desire and avoidance all tangled together. That's not chaos. That's feedback. The universe isn't broken. It's mirroring your mixed messages back to you with surgical precision. So the real work isn't about building a new life. It's about becoming the version of you that a new life can't help but respond to. That version of you isn't built from strategies or hacks. It's born from coherence. And coherence begins when you stop negotiating with the past, when you stop arguing with your emotions, stop editing your truth, and stop waiting for permission to be who you already are. Because once your internal signal stabilizes, reality bends. But that stability doesn't come from controlling every thought. It comes from embodiment, from living the new frequency before you see results, from walking like it's done even when it looks like nothing's happening. That's not delusion, that's quantum alignment. And quantum alignment doesn't move reality eventually, it moves it now. Your current life isn't a punishment, it's a match. It's the exact echo of your dominant signal. That can sound harsh, especially if you're struggling, especially if life feels unfair. But this isn't blame, it's power. Because if your signal created this story, then it means you can shift it. You don't need to ask the universe for permission. You don't need to wait for better circumstances. You need to tune your frequency, and not once, relentlessly. Because here's the secret most people never hear. Reality isn't testing you, it's tuning you. Every delay, every loop, every repeated pattern, it's asking you one question: are you coherent yet? Are you aligned in thought, feeling, and action? Or are you still broadcasting contradictions and calling it truth? When the answer is yes, when your whole being becomes an unshakable I am, the field doesn't delay. It reflects, instantly, cleanly, relentlessly. Most people think the jump feels like clarity, like a sudden burst of motivation, confidence, or direction. But that's not how it works. Not in real life, not in physics. The moment of quantum shift doesn't feel clean. It feels like friction, like static, like the signal is cutting out. Because in that moment, the old version of you is collapsing, and the system doesn't go quietly. See, electrons don't move gradually between orbits. They don't climb up through space. They leap, discontinuously. One moment they're here, and the next, they're somewhere else entirely. No path, no steps, no trace. That leap isn't smooth. It's unstable. But that instability is the signal, not the problem. When your mind feels foggy, when your emotions feel chaotic, when nothing seems to make sense anymore, that's not confusion. That's confirmation. You're not falling apart. You're jumping. But here's the trap. We've been conditioned to fear that feeling. We've been taught to interpret discomfort as failure, to pull back at the exact moment we should be letting go. So we reach for what's familiar, the routine, the identity, the old rhythm, and just like that, the leap aborts. The moment passes, and we call it a bad day, a funk, a mood swing. But it wasn't a mood, it was a portal. Because the shift, the real shift, doesn't announce itself. It's not an epiphany, it's a silent recalibration. Things fall away, people disappear, habits dissolve, not because something's wrong, but because they're no longer in resonance. The timeline you were on, the one shaped by your past self, is disintegrating. And your nervous system isn't malfunctioning. It's recalibrating, relearning how to operate on a new frequency without collapsing into the old. That recalibration is messy. You won't always have language for what's happening. The mind will panic because it's losing control. But control was never your compass. Resonance is. And resonance often feels like loss before it feels like alignment. The job that suddenly doesn't fit. The friend who starts to feel distant. The goal that used to excite you now feels hollow. You didn't lose direction. You shifted frequency. And the reality that matched your old self is dissolving because it no longer has permission to stay. Most people never make the leap because they expect the new self to come with confirmation, with signs, with evidence. But the jump comes before proof, and that's what makes it quantum. It doesn't wait for the environment to validate you. It moves regardless. It activates without conditions. And the ones who make it across, they're not braver. They're just willing to be uncomfortable longer than the average person. Because discomfort is not resistance. It's the residue of the old self breaking down. The emotional friction isn't punishment. It's transformation. The confusion isn't regression. It's signal instability while the system reboots. Think about it. When you install a new operating system, things glitch. The screen goes black. The cursor freezes. It looks like something's wrong, but it's just transition. And the same is true here. You're not breaking down, you're breaking out. So if your life feels like it stopped making sense, don't rush to fix it. Don't rush to label the moment. Let the confusion breathe. Let the identity dissolve. That's the space where reality reshapes itself, not by strategy, but by coherence. And that coherence often begins when you decide, before the fear goes away, before the path is clear, before the support shows up, the decision precedes the confirmation. That's the nature of the jump. The ones who shift aren't the ones who wait for the moment to feel good. They're the ones who move when it doesn't, who stay in the signal long enough for the field to stabilize. And when it does, it doesn't return to normal. It becomes unrecognizable. Because the field doesn't mirror who you were, it mirrors who you are now. And if you're no longer resonating with the past, then the past can no longer anchor your future. You want proof? Look around at everything falling apart. That's your confirmation. You've already jumped. Now your job is to stop reaching back. Let the old self decompose without trying to save it. The confusion, the void, the silence, that's not the end. That's the space between timelines. The moment the electron vanishes from one orbit and appears in another. No fanfare, no certainty, just a new state of being, locked in without needing to explain itself. People talk a lot about feelings when it comes to transformation. Feel your way to the new life. If you want it bad enough, the universe will respond. But that's not how it works. Not at the quantum level. The field doesn't listen to how loud your emotions are. It listens to how clear your signal is. That means it's not about passion or pain or even desire. It's about coherence, internal alignment, signal purity. And this is exactly where most people fall short. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. You can want something with all your heart, but if your energy is scattered, if you're broadcasting mixed frequencies, the field doesn't know what to reflect. You're sending two messages at once, one of hope and one of fear, one of action and one of hesitation, one of longing and one of disbelief. And when the signal is mixed, the response is static. Glitches, loops, nothing changes. People say they're stuck, but the field isn't stuck. It's reflecting exactly what they're broadcasting. Think about that. Your current reality isn't evidence of failure. It's evidence of what you're still tuned into. Every doubt you rehearse, every old story you keep alive, every identity you haven't buried yet. They're all part of the signal. And the quantum field isn't sentimental. It doesn't give you what you wish for. It gives you what your vibration confirms. This is why some people can work harder than anyone and still see no real progress. Because while they're acting, while they're pushing, while they're trying to force the shift, deep down, they haven't left the old frequency. They're still identified with the self that doesn't believe it's possible, the self that needs proof, the self that doubts. And that dissonance sends noise into the field. So what comes back? Mixed results, inconsistency, confusion. And they interpret that as failure, when really, it's feedback. You don't jump timelines by convincing the world you've changed. You jump when the signal is clean, when your thoughts, emotions, and actions all say the same thing. No conflict, no performance, no asking for permission, just total, silent coherence. You don't need to shout into the universe. You just need to stop contradicting yourself. That's when the field can finally lock onto your coordinates and mirror something new. And the cost of incoherence, it's not just delay, it's exhaustion. Because when your energy is split between two realities, you're constantly bleeding power. You're imagining a future while staying loyal to a past. You're affirming growth while rehearsing wounds. And that loop creates friction, fatigue, burnout. Not because you're doing too much, but because your system is trying to maintain two identities at once, and it's tearing you apart. The fix isn't more effort, it's more honesty. What are you still defending that doesn't match who you want to become? What story are you secretly addicted to? What fear have you normalized? These are the roots of incoherence. And coherence begins by cutting them off, not gently but decisively, not with negotiation, but with energetic finality. The cleanest signal doesn't beg for results. It declares reality. It doesn't need reassurance because the shift has already happened inside. The outer world is just catching up. And that confidence, it's not arrogance, it's alignment. Because when your inner world is unified, the outer world has no choice. It bends, not by force, by resonance. So if you're doing everything right, but still feel stuck, don't look at the effort. Look at the signal. Is your vision clear or clouded by contradiction? Are your actions empowered or performed out of fear? Is your new identity fully embodied or just an escape hatch from discomfort? The field responds to clarity, not confusion. And clarity isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet refusal to engage with the old narrative ever again. And when that refusal is real, when you're done trying to fix what no longer reflects who you are, something radical happens. The past stops echoing, the future stops glitching, and the now becomes weightless, because you're no longer resisting it, you're no longer split. And that moment, the moment you collapse the internal static, that's when the shift stabilizes. That's when the field finally mirrors something new without distortion. You don't need to push harder. You need to get cleaner, sharper, more internally loyal to the version of you that already jumped. And when your signal stops contradicting itself, the universe doesn't hesitate. It obeys, not out of magic, but out of physics. Because clarity isn't just attractive, it's magnetic, and it's the only language the field understands. The moment you jump, it doesn't feel like a celebration. It feels like silence, like confusion, like things breaking down without explanation. And this is where most people misunderstand the shift. They think the discomfort means something's gone wrong, that the pain is a sign they failed. But what they're feeling isn't failure. It's the recalibration, the void between timelines, the in-between. When your frequency changes, when you stop participating in the patterns of the old self, reality doesn't instantly reshape itself to match. It starts dismantling what no longer fits. That's the part no one prepares you for. You lose interest in people who used to define you. Situations begin falling apart, not dramatically, but unnervingly. The job that once felt like your identity suddenly tastes like ash. The friends you clung to stop calling. And your mind, it panics. It looks for evidence, for reassurance, for some kind of sign that you made the right decision. But all it gets is quiet. And that quiet? That's the space between frequencies. You've stopped broadcasting the old signal, but the new one hasn't fully materialized yet. You're not who you were, but you're not fully who you're becoming either. You're suspended in the middle, and that space feels like chaos. Not because something's broken, but because the signal hasn't locked in yet. This is why the shift is hard to recognize in real time. You don't get a badge that says, "Congratulations, you've upgraded." You get disorientation. You get tested, not by the universe, but by the remnants of your old self begging for your attention. They show up in thoughts like, maybe I was wrong, maybe I should go back, maybe I need to fix things. But that's not your intuition. That's the echo of the identity you just left, trying to survive. The truth is, the quantum field doesn't rush. It waits for you to stabilize the new frequency before it reorganizes reality around you. And in the meantime, it clears space. That's what the silence is. It's the system purging the noise, the patterns, the habits, the relationships that can't come with you. And it's not doing it to punish you. It's doing it because incoherence cannot survive on a higher frequency. The version of you you're stepping into is allergic to the compromises you used to make. And that allergy feels like loss, like grief, like withdrawal from an identity that was safe, but suffocating. This is why many people unconsciously sabotage their jump. They misinterpret the void as a sign they did something wrong. They get scared, and they retreat. They reattach to what's falling away, trying to stabilize themselves with things that no longer resonate. But the moment you try to rebuild the old while calling in the new, you collapse the coherence. You interrupt the transmission. You go back to broadcasting a split signal, and the field responds accordingly. To hold the new frequency, you have to let the silence be holy. You have to understand that nothing showing up doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means the old code is dissolving, the field is realigning, and reality is catching up to the message your energy already sent. In that space, the greatest discipline isn't action, it's stillness. It's resisting the urge to fix, to prove, to chase. It's learning to trust the jump, even when there's no external evidence yet. That trust isn't blind. It's built on resonance, on the quiet knowing that you're not who you used to be, even if the world hasn't caught on. It's waking up and noticing that the same triggers don't hit the same way, that your nervous system is calmer, even if your circumstances are not, that your intuition is louder, even if your path looks messier. That's the shift. That's how it begins. Not with a bang, but with a break. A break from the cycle, the chase, the compulsion to solve everything externally. And eventually, the silence starts to speak, in whispers, in moments of clarity, in random alignments that seem too precise to be coincidence. That's how the field responds. Not always with lightning bolts, but with subtle confirmations. And when they come, they don't scream, "You made it." They simply feel like truth, like home, like, "This is it." But you only get there if you stay the course, if you don't confuse the void with failure. Because the void is sacred. It's the space where the old self dissolves and the new self roots. It's the quiet between thoughts where new reality forms. Most people avoid it. But if you can sit in it, breathe through it, and stop trying to fill it, you'll notice something. You're not falling apart. You're just falling out of alignment with everything that never really matched you in the first place. That's not breakdown. That's liberation. It's easy to change your energy when everything around you is already changing. When your life is improving, your relationships are aligned, Your bank account reflects abundance, and your purpose feels crystal clear. But that's not where the real work happens. The real work begins in the void, after you've jumped, but before the world has updated. And this is where most people fall back into their old timeline, not because they want to, but because they don't realize how fragile the new signal is at first. It's not a lack of desire, it's a lack of coherence. See, when you emit a new frequency, one built on self-worth, purpose, or love, the field receives it instantly. But reality takes a second to catch up. You've sent out the new coordinates, but if you keep checking the map every 5 minutes, second-guessing, adjusting, reacting, you weaken the signal. And the quantum field doesn't respond to your intention. It responds to your broadcast. Not what you think you're sending out, but what your energy is actually transmitting, consistently. This is why holding the frequency is harder than most people expect, because the evidence doesn't come first. The feeling does. And that means your new identity must exist before the world reflects it back. You have to embody the new self in a world that still treats you like the old one. That takes power. Not external power, but energetic integrity. A kind of quiet defiance that says, I'm not reacting to this version of reality anymore. I've already chosen another one. But here's where people stumble. They keep one foot in the old life. Not because they don't believe in the new one, but because the old is familiar, predictable. It doesn't matter how toxic the pattern is. If it's known, it feels safer than the unknown. So they oscillate. They meditate. They visualize. They journal. And then they spend the rest of the day reinforcing the old frequency by checking the bank account obsessively, replaying old pain, entertaining people who pull them backwards. And then they wonder why nothing's moving. It's not that the field isn't responding. It's that it doesn't know which signal to respond to. You can't rehearse expansion for 20 minutes a day and rehearse lack the other 23 hours and expect quantum change. The field isn't fooled by your words. It reads your alignment. And the biggest killer of coherence is mixed signals. Hoping while fearing, acting while doubting, dreaming while settling. The quantum doesn't respond to intensity. It responds to clarity. To stay jumped, to remain on the new frequency, you have to become neurologically and emotionally unavailable to the version of you that created your current story. Not because that version was wrong, but because it's expired. You don't anchor a new identity by arguing with the old one. You anchor it by refusing to entertain it. And this isn't about avoidance. It's about decision. When your nervous system is trained to expect disappointment, neutrality will feel like risk. But that discomfort, that's the upgrade installing. That's the glitch in the matrix where the new code overrides the old program. It's also where people start to feel alone, because the new identity isn't just a solo shift. It often means a shift in your environment. People start to pull away. Opportunities disappear. Paths close. But it's not rejection. It's a filtering system. The field is purging misalignments to make room for the new match. But most people interpret that loss as a sign that they're doing it wrong, so they scramble to fix it. That impulse to fix is the temptation to regress. And that's when they slip back into the narrative, the identity, the energy that created the very reality they were trying to leave behind. The challenge isn't becoming the new self. It's remaining them when everything still looks the same. Because this part, the maintenance of the new broadcast, is where transformation gets real. Anyone can raise their frequency in a peak moment, but can you hold it in the flat line? Can you be the new version when there's nothing confirming it yet? When the people around you doubt it? When your bank balance hasn't changed, when your environment hasn't shifted, when your external world still echoes the old signal, can you hold the new one anyway? Because that's what determines whether you quantum jump or just mentally entertain the idea. The field only reorganizes when your energy is stable enough to support the update. You don't manifest what you visit. You manifest what you live in, day out, emotionally, energetically, consistently. The jump becomes real not when you imagine it, but when you stop betraying it. You were taught to measure your life by what you could prove, by what others could see, validate, and applaud. Success became a checklist, status, salary, recognition, security. And you weren't just encouraged to chase it, you were conditioned to crave it, to tie your worth to it, to believe it was the only route to a meaningful life. But the truth is, the version of success you were handed is one of the strongest anchors to your old frequency. It's the quiet hand that keeps dragging you back to a life you've already outgrown. Because even after you jump, after you shift your identity and calibrate your energy, those old metrics sneak back in. You start evaluating your growth based on whether the outside has caught up yet. You wonder why the money hasn't arrived, why people haven't noticed, why your new self still feels like a secret. And that's the trap. You start adjusting your frequency to chase proof. Not because you're wrong, but because you were programmed to believe that transformation isn't real unless someone else can see it. But quantum change doesn't obey that rule. It doesn't bend to visibility. You're not here to chase success in the way you were taught. You're here to redefine it, so it stops pulling you back. Because the truth is, the old version of success, approval, recognition, achievement, isn't just outdated, it's dangerous. It lures you into performing an identity that keeps you energetically stuck. It seduces you into becoming a version of yourself that's optimized for applause, not alignment. And that version, it can never jump. Real success, quantum success, isn't loud. It's not something you post. It's something you feel. It's alignment without evidence, purpose without permission. It's waking up and knowing you are no longer negotiating with the version of you that needed the world to validate your shift. And once you hold that knowing, everything starts to rearrange. Not to impress others, but to reflect you. Not the self you were trained to be, but the one you were meant to remember. The problem is, most people try to jump with the old story still running in the background. They shift energy but keep the same metrics. They meditate and visualize and journal, but then grade their progress on numbers and outcomes and visibility. And then they wonder why the field doesn't respond. It's not confusion. It's incoherence. The signal isn't clean. You can't broadcast, "I am whole," while needing external success to feel enough. You can't emit self-trust while checking for validation every hour. The signal collapses under contradiction. That's why the recalibration of success is so important. Until you let go of the idea that success must look a certain way, you'll keep trying to jump while dragging the past with you. You'll wonder why your new timeline feels so heavy, why the leap doesn't stick. It's because you're still measuring yourself with tools built for your old identity. So what if success wasn't proof, but peace? What if it wasn't about arrival, but resonance? What if it wasn't something to pursue, but something to allow? This isn't poetic. It's quantum. The version of you that you're trying to become, the one with clarity, alignment, purpose. It's not further away than you think. It's just existing on a different frequency. And the only way to get there is to let go of the version of success that made you abandon yourself to begin with. When you no longer need the world to clap for your growth, you become dangerous to the system that profits off your doubt. You move differently. You stop chasing and start aligning. And the field? It mirrors back the internal shift, because it finally has a clean signal to respond to. Most people will spend their lives chasing a version of success they never even chose. You don't have to be one of them. Redefine what winning means to you. Let it be soft, sovereign, sacred. Let it be invisible to others but undeniable to you. That's not stepping down. That's stepping into power the world can't measure, but the field absolutely can. The jump is not the finish line. It's the beginning of a new conversation with the field. You've shifted your frequency, calibrated your identity, and broken the loop of who you used to be. But now comes the part most people overlook, staying jumped. Because when the old emotions try to sneak back in, when the environment reflects your past more than your future, when the silence stretches longer than you expected, your old self will whisper, "See? Nothing changed." And that's when most people fall back. Not because the jump didn't work, but because they stopped broadcasting the new signal before it had time to lock in. What happens after the jump is just as important as the jump itself. The field doesn't work like a genie. It doesn't care what you want. It mirrors what you are. That means the only job after your shift is to keep becoming the clearest signal of the new frequency, every single day, even when the evidence hasn't arrived yet. Especially then, You'll be tempted to compromise. You'll feel drawn to explain yourself to people who only know your old story. You'll want to adjust your truth to be more palatable, more relatable, more believable. Don't. That is the frequency of the old self trying to reclaim its position, not because it's strong, but because it's familiar. And if you negotiate with familiarity, you lose alignment. And if you lose alignment, you lose signal. And the moment your signal gets fuzzy, the field pauses, not to punish, but to wait. Because incoherence isn't punished, it's simply not mirrored. This is where most people sabotage their timeline, not from laziness, but from subtle self-doubt. They shift, they calibrate, they hold the line, and then the silence convinces them they imagined it all. But the silence is not a no, it's a test of resonance. The field is checking if this version of you is stable, if the signal holds when no one claps, if your truth stays true in the void. That's not failure, that's confirmation that you've jumped. So how do you stay jumped? You become emotionally unavailable to anything that contradicts your new frequency. You don't entertain stories that don't match your new identity. You don't rehearse old narratives for comfort. You don't perform for familiarity. You don't feed what you've outgrown. This isn't denial, it's devotion. You're not pretending. You're protecting your signal, because everything you once believed was real because you kept feeding it. The second you stop, it starts to fade. That's not delusion, that's physics. The key is to stop waiting for proof and start living like you are the proof. You're not hoping the shift worked. You are the shift. You're not chasing the evidence. You're embodying the cause. And when that signal is stable enough, consistent enough, sharp enough, the field has no choice but to collapse a new version of reality around it. Not slowly, not someday, immediately. Because in quantum physics, time is not the governing force. Clarity is. This is the moment you stop looking at your life as a reaction and start seeing it as a reflection. Every time you choose coherence over comfort, you reinforce the frequency. Every time you honor the new version of you without the world's permission, you accelerate the shift. And every time you feel that old identity pulling at you, and you choose not to answer, you break another loop, you dissolve another anchor. You move further and further into the reality that already exists for the version of you who stopped waiting. Because you're not trying to manifest something outside of you. You're synchronizing with a version of yourself that already lives the life you want. And your only job now is to keep becoming the signal so precisely that the world has no choice but to catch up. Don't wait for confirmation. You are the confirmation. And this is the part where most people get distracted. They let the noise of the world dilute their energy. They start scrolling, comparing, doubting. But this path isn't about being louder. It's about being clearer. The clearer your signal, the louder your field speaks. Not in words, but in rearranged circumstances, in unexpected synchronicities, in impossible moments that only make sense when you realize the field was never ignoring you. It was just waiting for you to stop negotiating with your past. You've already jumped. Now you stay jumped. And the way you do that is by refusing to be available for anything that treats your new self like a costume. You don't just believe it, you become unavailable to anything else. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. And once the alignment is clean, everything changes. And if you've made it this far, it's clear you're not here for surface-level knowledge. You're here because you feel it, that pull to operate on a deeper level, to embody a truth most people aren't ready for. So if you haven't already, join the free Insights Academy newsletter using the link in the description. There's content there we simply can't publish here. And for a limited time, you'll get a free ebook copy of The Kabbalion to take this even deeper. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting. I understood it.